Hello, everyone. Welcome to the GLORIO Chat, the best anime podcast on the internet. Not even an active god can stop us from recording this podcast, as we're here on a Sunday, and our usual podcast service has been shut down by a hurricane. But hey,
neither rain nor snow nor sleet or however that motto goes can stop
glom of knit.
Yes.
Yeah.
Can't even be stopped by Vash the Stampede. The humanoid typhoon.
Yeah, so
not the right season for it yet, but appreciate
we're almost
it.
there.
Right.
Almost there. But yeah.
They did actually
Anyway.
show concept art that confirms that Wolfwood will be in the anime. So
Sure, cool.
Yes, we will have plenty of time to talk about Trigun another day. But for this episode,
we got a barn burner for you guys.
Yeah, we're in a weird place where this is technically, I guess, the time we would normally be doing our season wrap up, and in some ways, that's kind of what this is for the summer season. Even though most of the shows on here still have one episode left. Also, we were not watching that much. Not a whole lot survived to the end of the season anyway.
Yeah.
At least with this particular group we have on right now. So there's that. There's a couple of big things that Netflix dropped that I think we need to talk about while they're hot at the moment, and we will certainly be talking about more throughout the next season. And yeah, so a bit of a hybrid, I think, of things to talk about. But I guess technically this is our last kind of official opportunity to talk about the summer 2022 season. So
yeah, I mean, on some level, we have joked about it many times, but for better or worse, seasons basically don't mean anything anymore in anime, right? With the advent of Netflix streaming and web streaming and net series and such, it's just
they still
shows can just air whenever they want to now.
I feel this season in particular,
I would say that Japan. Oh, sorry, Joe, go on.
No, I was going to say this season in particular, I feel like every episode of the podcast, we had our core shows, but then we were bringing in somebody else to talk about another show that just came out. Like,
right.
Like every week there was still another show coming out. So there's still like a core of summer shows, but then it was just like, who knows when some of these things are happening.
I mean, I would say that the only reason that the traditional season style has persisted this long is Japan's sort of resistance to because here in the West, linear TV is basically done, right? Except for news and live sports. That's about it. Everything that's anything debuts on a streaming service now. So I feel like that is just like a preview of where anime will be in a few years.
Yeah. And in a way, I mean, it is probably still a convenient way of timing productions and everything. But yeah, I think it's only going to get more all over the place as time goes on. But anyway, we got quite a bit to talk about. And before we get started, I'll introduce everybody. I'm Jel. I'm joined by Iro.
I'm not dead yet.
Still with us. We're joined by G.
What's good, everybody?
And for 2 episodes in a row, we've got Zig with us.
Yes, now the official mourning period is over. I can talk shit about anything and everyone. So,
the tears of the kingdom have been dried.
Yeah.
Yes.
Still can't believe Nintendo decided not to stream that stream.
Unbelievable. Is that not the most a very Nintendo-like solution?
Yeah. But it was fine to stream it everywhere else, right? Because there would be no way that anyone in the UK could have watched it. This is a very
if you're telling me that
if
you're telling me that Nintendo don't understand how the internet works, I will 100% believe you.
I mean, based on what I've been hearing people say about Splatoon 3, which is that, hey, it's a really good game cobbled together by maybe some of the worst netcode imaginable, that seems to hold true.
They're still trying to figure it out, but yeah. Anyway, we got things to talk about, and before we get into the anime stuff, I did want to touch on what has been the hot news topic in the anime industry, I guess, the past week. I don't know if your average anime fan knows or cares about any of this, but I feel like if you're listening to an obscure anime podcast, you probably have heard about this. So I'm talking about the news that came out about Crunchyroll essentially refusing to talk or negotiate with the Screen Actors Guild, which is, of course, the union that represents actors.
I think it's important to emphasize at this point as well, it's not even that they refuse to recognize a union or like to negotiate. They refuse to literally have a sit-down meeting and talk about the possibility of unionization.
Right. Yes. So this came out because the voice actor that plays Mob in Mob Psycho 100 put out a video in which he essentially announced that he was probably not coming back, and it was confirmed later that he's not coming back for season 3. Because he put out even the suggestion that Crunchyroll take a meeting with the union. And interestingly, he mentioned later on that he was even willing to do this season non-union, and that Crunchyroll is not like lowballing him or anything on this. It was just a matter of, hey, can we have a meeting? And rather than meeting, they were just like, well, we look forward to recasting Mob Psycho 100.
Right. Yeah, I mean, this is the really fucked up thing about it, right? Is that, yeah, like they were, the voice actors were even willing to do this job non-union because, and let's let us be clear, right? Like when we are saying stuff like for the love of the craft or for the love of the game, we are speaking about an industry that is inherently run on passion by passionate people, right? Like these tend to be people who do these jobs because they genuinely love it, and they deserve. Yes, right. And they deserve to be properly compensated for it. And yet they are still also willing to compromise because of how much they appreciate the craft. And even then, Crunchyroll's not willing to play ball.
Yeah. So like they just recently purchased Funimation, or like acquired Funimation, and Funimation has their like whole in-house dubbing situation, right? Like in Texas,
down in Dallas,
and apparently they invested in that Texas-based studio. Probably that whole thing screams to me of like, we spent a lot of money on this, and good or bad, we're going to use it sort of situation.
Yeah,
as this is also dug up the news that came out a couple months ago about them insisting on ending remote recording and bringing everything in-house in Texas.
Right. Except when they don't want to. Like there have been a couple of dubs that recently have used high-profile LA actors.
Right, but I'm sure their goal is to try to bring it in-house, or at least that's what they're claiming.
Yes, yeah. But I'm saying that like there are plenty of holes to carve out exceptions. This is not a hard and fast rule, which is important because the sort of excuse they used for recasting Carl McFarley is that like, oh, we have to use Texas area voice actors.
in the very disgusting sort of PR machine, disaster
blast.
Blast that they put out in response to, but I think that was actually directly in response to ANN, if I recall. They were like, oh yes, because of the logistics of recording or whatever in the new studio, we're gonna have to recast or whatever, and it's
just fucking gross. It really sucks.
It's all
the thing I want to say actually is, I mean, the situation sucks for the reasons that it already obviously sucks, but I think it also sucks because now there's a lot of voice actors who probably love the work they do that are now caught in a really shitty, uncomfortable position because, like, let's be real, like, union or not, being a voice actor is not exactly a glamorous gig, right? Like any creative profession, as I can attest, sometimes you take a job because you need the job, right?
Yeah.
And I guess I want to be clear, look, if to any of the, not that they're listening to this, but to any of the voice actors who, decide, this whole situation sucks, but getting to play a role in a high-profile anime like Mob Psycho 100 is still worth it for my career, I don't blame those people at all because, like,
no, right.
It's a tough situation for everybody, and like sometimes.
And it's worth pointing out that SAG-AFTRA, which is the specific section of the Screen Actors Guild for voice actors, it hasn't declared that you cannot take Crunchyroll jobs, even though it is a non-union house, and there's in some professions you are not meant to take non-union work while you are in the union.
I think that's kind of pointing to the other kind of factor in here is trying to move voice acting into a higher level of, I guess, legitimacy, if you will, because every other, most other TV productions, movies, things all are union. Like, they have to be. And, it's only fair that the, especially as anime continues to be more and more mainstream and make a lot more money, why shouldn't they have the same treatment as other, people in the industry? So.
Right, this is particularly gross coming on the back of the fact that Crunchyroll was just recently acquired for, what was it, $1.2 billion, something
they got a lot of money to spend.
Yeah, it turns out, when your parent company is like Aniplex and then indirectly Sony, it turns out that you really do have deep pockets, and...
I think, for God's sake, I think one of the voice actors for, one of the dubbers for, I think it's Jujutsu Kaisen Zero.
I was just about to bring this up.
Bring it up.
That movie made like $30 million in the United States, and some of the dub actors were talking about how they were paid $150.
Yeah,
for the entire movie. Yes.
Yeah, this has just had like a bunch of long-time anime voice actors come out of the woodwork and basically say that like the only reason they keep doing anime is for the love of the game, so to speak. That it is not. It is not a viable way to make a living. As
like leverage con appearances and stuff, to get by.
But it's absolutely unacceptable in this day and age that work should be paying those sort of ways. And combine this with the reports from a few months back of the kind of like poverty level wages that Crunchyroll pays its subtitlers as well.
Yeah, like everybody.
Yeah. And like you get the impression of like a company that is raking it in, because make no mistake, Crunchyroll's making a lot of money. Yeah. And is just kind of cutting costs to the absolute bone, and that's bad.
When you go try to cancel your subscription and they say your action will hurt the anime studio.
Right. And on some level, actually, maybe we should even get into that a little bit, is like, on some level, you almost have to ask yourself how much, if you're subscribed to Crunchyroll, how much of that money is even going into the hands of, I don't even mean the studio itself, but even the dubbers, the subtitlers, all the back-end stuff that is
like the people who do like the video mastering, all of that kind of stuff.
Like, and how much are they even seeing of your subscription at this point? And at that point, is it even worth it?
And it's even more weird because, like, remember, Crunchyroll started as a pirate site. Crunchyroll's origin is like fucking like we ripped off all this shit
or whatever. Right?
Yeah, they'll try to paper that over, but we old heads remember the truth.
and so it's so weird, I mean, like, look. It wasn't acceptable 20 years ago, but at least there you could beg off and say that anime was like a super niche thing and you needed your razor thin margins, But like Crunchyroll is a big business, Crunchyroll is bigger than a lot of movie studios at this point when you're valued at $1.2 billion.
Yeah, I mean, we're going to talk about it in a little bit here, but we are now seeing anime series that are like single-handedly turning the tide on the perception of like billion-dollar franchises.
Yes. And there have been a lot of people raising that question of, well, if my money is not going towards supporting the industry like it's supposed to, then what am I paying for? And a lot of people are talking about canceling accounts. I think as always, this becomes the balance of, where do you make your stand for?
Yeah, you got to draw your own line
for your personal values versus, there is no ethical consumption under capitalism.
Right.
I mean, it's not like
go ahead.
Like, it's not like Crunchyroll wasn't owned by an evil corporation before this, and quite frankly had, this conversation come up, even a couple years ago at any point during their time with AT&T and Sony, would they I'm assuming they probably would have done the same thing, but it's opening another wound here that, makes people question what they're paying for.
Definitely.
So.
Yeah.
I will point out that, I guess, just in case for people who are like not as familiar with like the monetization of how anime makes money, if you are the type of fan who your number one priority is just that you want your dollars put in to go directly to the studio,
buy the merch.
Yes, buy merchandise. Merchandising is where studios make their real money. You know, if you like Gundam, buy Gunpla. If you like Idolmaster or Love Life, buy the girl figures. You know what I mean? Like that's
play the gacha games.
Yes.
Well, you are literally giving them money for nothing there.
That's actually that's probably like directly donate if you want to make direct donations. Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
Play Love Life, play the gacha, and treat it as a Ko-fi like tip jar.
I mean, but kind of like to extend this point to a slightly more serious thing is that like Crunchyroll is now powerful enough that it's appearing on the production committee of many anime, and like, you know, one of the few sources of revenue for studios and production committees directly from the shows themselves, because, you know, you've got TV advertising stuff, but that's a fraction of a fraction. You know, overseas streaming rights are a big source of money that come directly from the show, you know, and by basically cornering the market, you know, Crunchyroll is beginning to establish dominance over that form from, you know, literally from the first moment of production to the finished product. So, you know, I mean, look, like, it's convenient to have everything all in one place, but there are consequences to that. And, you know, it turns out when there's a monopoly, you can do shit like, say, fuck off Union and stuff.
Yeah.
Like that.
I think I have a lot of thoughts about the monopoly thing as well, because I feel like that's always been a problem. But yes, it's much worse now that, you know, it's the two biggest streaming services have combined together. But and, you know, poor High Dive. High Dive has been getting a lot of shows. I think that has been a result of that. But they're also
if only High Dive were stronger, they could protect us.
They have a business relationship with Sentai, right?
Yeah, something like that.
And weren't Sentai recently sold to someone?
I'm not sure, but
Right Stuff was sold, which was
up prior
that might be
to
what I was thinking.
Prior to the Funimation merger, they were not getting like any new shows. And then once the merger happened, they've gotten quite a few. Like, I mean, they had, you know, like this season they had like Call of the Night, which was a fairly high profile one. You know, like they've had a couple others. So, you know, I just wish their service wasn't awful. That's the thing.
There's always the specter of Netflix lurking in the background, obviously. But
yeah, I think they're kind of the big dog at this point, which ironically, apparently they use union dubs, but I'm not going to give Netflix any credit for anything. So, just saying, if even Netflix can do it, you know, maybe we should be rethinking that. But yeah, situation sucks, and you know, I think it's high time we officially remove the GLORIO blog does not endorse piracy asterisk.
Is it finally time?
I'm not gonna say we do endorse it. I'm just gonna say maybe it's time we get rid of that disclaimer.
Look, the Western anime fandom was born out of piracy, and at some point you can't leave your roots behind.
You got to come home sometimes, I guess.
You can't stop me, guys. I'm opening up the 8th gate.
I mean, look,
put out a new APB on Miami Mike.
I mean, look,
I've heard of this. I've heard of this thing called Naya that the kids are talking about.
Yeah, no, it was in that new Resident Evil show. Huh? Yes. But in all seriousness, I mean, like, we have always covered material that is blatantly pirated on the blog because we cover tokusatsu, and that has never had a legitimate way to obtain it.
That's a whole nother discussion.
Not timely, anyway.
Right, that's a whole nother discussion of like.
I'm saying, you know, like that stuff, like that culture is still there. You know, it lurks below the surface,
and will never go anywhere.
Yeah, and I'm just saying that you know, Crunchy, their grip is perhaps not quite as tight as they would like. Let's say.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's move on to something more positive.
We gotta stick it to the corpo.
Yes, there you go. There's our through line here.
Yep. So
the fuck
Netflix.
up, samurai! We got a city to burn.
Oh my god.
Let's talk about some new anime. For the record, we did, if you recall, in our fall preview way back when, we did mention this because I wasn't sure where to put it because it's technically started in September. But we're talking about Cyberpunk Edgerunners, which came out on Netflix this week, was it?
2 weeks
Last
ago,
week?
I think.
Two weeks
Joe,
ago?
I thought this was a season
week and a
finale
bit.
podcast.
I already gave that whole speech in the
I
beginning.
know.
Yes.
You're right.
But no, so this came out here on the back end of this season, so seasons don't matter. This, of course, is the long-awaited anime loosely based around, well, I would say it's in the same universe as the Cyberpunk 2077.
I would not say
It's not
loosely
Yeah,
anymore.
honestly, I'm surprised by
Okay.
how faithful to the game / RPG it is.
Okay, that's fair, I suppose. I mean, this was announced like before the game came out, right? So like,
You should probably say what it is.
Oh, I thought I said, okay, well, it's Cyberpunk Edgerunners
Yeah.
is the title of the anime, which is...
Studio Trigger's Cyberpunk Edgerunners.
Yes.
Thank you for that, because... Okay, look, I get it. This is a weirdly specific rant, but I have noticed on a lot of Western games journalist beats, they have been referring to it as CDPR's Cyberpunk Edgerunners. And I shit you not, I literally read an article that did not even say the word Studio Trigger even once in its review of Cyberpunk Edgerunners. And
I mean,
I literally had sentences in the review like CDPR really takes the visual flourish of the game to a whole next level in the anime, and I'm like, that's not them.
Yeah,
That's Trigger.
This is just a long tradition. Like, you don't see people talking about Toei Animation's G.I. Joe, do you?
that's from a different
era. Yes, I'm being facetious.
Toei
A much
Animation's
different era.
opening to Thundercats.
Yeah, but the thing I would say about that is that, like, I suspect those sites are like the super mainstream sites that are appealing to people who have heard of Cyberpunk 2077, but don't know and don't care who Studio Trigger or
It's weird because I feel like even like the most mainstream video game websites cover anime now. Like, this should be like, I don't know,
right? But in a very broad way, you know.
Yeah, but I mean, this is about as, you know, mainstream as Trigger's ever going to get here.
I guess
so.
a good site would have a greater understanding of anime, because if you're covering games or covering Japanese games, whereas if you're like a mainstream media website, you just cover shit that's on Netflix, and so don't know, you know.
Yeah.
Right, I think to a lot of people, Edgerunners is not a Trigger anime, it is a Netflix anime.
Yeah.
Right. Yes.
Well, anyway, that aside, we've decided to pace it out. There's 10 episodes, and we're doing one a week as if it were a normal release. So I think, Zig, you're still at one episode, but the rest of us have watched 2.
No, I've seen 2 now.
Oh, okay. So we've all seen up to episode 2, and it's pretty good.
Yeah, I like this show. Like, I think it's...
Oh, you first, Jay.
Sure. I'll just say, I think when they originally announced this was Imaishi or Trigger's next big project overall, I think, was this announced at the same time as Dynazenon? And
no,
it was announced shortly before Dynazenon started airing.
No, this was announced in a Cyberpunk 2077 event.
Okay,
yeah.
Or like some sort of games thing where in their Cyberpunk segment, and then they were like, and we're doing an anime with Studio Trigger, and we all just went like, what?
Yeah, so that's actually what I want to get is, I think at the time we were all like, wow, I guess that's a year or two of Trigger's career down the drain, I guess.
I mean, I think what we saw it as... I think what we all saw it as was, we will take this enormous paycheck and give up a year of our art in return for financial stability, right?
But it turns out that I think, at least, okay, again, you know, to be clear, we've only watched the first 2 episodes. I think Edgerunners does a better job of evoking the cyberpunk like vibe than the game does by a long shot.
Absolutely.
I would broadly agree.
I
having
also
played the
agree.
game.
I think it is difficult. I think, however, it is easier to evoke that that sort of atmosphere in a non-interactive piece of media because you have control over things like tone and mood.
I can't. Nobody's going to get on a motorcycle and then shoot into the sun in this show, right?
Would be pretty cool if they did, though. Let's be honest.
So yeah, I mean, if we're comparing to the game, like, for the record, I played a good portion of the game before it crashed out and I got frustrated and stopped. Not a big fan of the game. However, there are aspects of it that I did like, and which was particularly the Night City setting, and like I could see like glimpses of like this could be like a really great setting, and I feel like the anime so far is doing a much better job tapping into that.
Yeah,
so I think the thing which has surprised me the most is how relatively hard the story is, as in, like, it is a fairly hard cyberpunk story. They're
not pulling any punches with it, right?
Because I think, when you have Hiroyuki Imaishi, who is the director of this project and who directed Pantheon Stocking and Gurren Lagann, I would say that he is broadly more known for being comedic more than being serious, if that makes sense. Even when his works are serious, they tend to be the sort of very grand, operatic, over-the-top style of seriousness. And I think there's a lot of like dumb sight gags and stuff, like the people being jerked off by cyber holes and stuff like that. But I think overall, these first 2 episodes, I've been surprised by how kind of like grim and dirty the whole thing is.
I think I just love how fantastic of a tone piece the first 2 episodes are. We should probably summarize the story just a little bit for context. So Cyberpunk Edgerunners is about I guess a teenager named David Martinez who lives with his single mother, who is a first responder who is struggling to afford the tuition to send David to Arasaka Academy. In the Cyberpunk universe, Arasaka is sort of the de facto megacorp. And to be able to attend their corpo-sponsored school is sort of considered the fast track to making it in Night City.
But of course, he's a street guy, and so I have nobody there likes him because they're all Silver Spoon corpo types.
Right. He is the kid from the streets. He is there on, if not scholarship, then he is certainly there on some kind of like,
outreach program or something.
Yes, token outreach program.
They do mention he is very smart, right? Like at some point, like he's
right. Like he has he has. They keep alluding to this idea that David has the intelligence and the wit and the cleverness to be as good a corpo as anybody for,
but not
for all that means.
Right.
But
he's not into it. He's
right.
He's a punk. He's a punk. He hates the system. He hates the people around him.
Right. Like they make it very clear that getting into Arasaka Academy and succeeding in Arasaka Academy is primarily his mother's dream, not his. And I think the thing that really bowled me over, especially with episode 1, which is mainly introducing the character, his backstory, and then the inciting events that lead him down the path of becoming an edge runner, is how like delightfully banal his tragic backstory is.
Yeah, he's like one in millions, right? Like
he is failed by the system at every possible turn, right? Like
and that's the foundation of Cyberpunk, right? The tragedy of Cyberpunk is you have become a cog in a gigantic machine which does not think and does not feel. It just consumes you and spits you up out the other
and
side.
The moment you cannot keep up, the moment you fall even slightly out of sync, you get grinded up by the gears. And that's exactly what happens to David in the first episode. Like, they reveal that his mother basically steals a very high-end bit of cybernetics from the scene of a crime because she's a first responder.
Right.
And is likely intending to sell it off to afford David's tuition.
And there's some vague there's some vague hints that perhaps this is something she has been doing on the low for a while.
Right.
But which is how she is affording to send him to this super prestigious school.
And I think the thing that's really cool in the first episode is that the inciting incident that leads David down his path is not because of that piece of cybernetics. It's not like, oh, you took the secret artifact and now the whole world's after you. No, it's just that he gets caught in the middle of a completely separate crime, a crime that is just the basic tapestry of Night City.
Maybe if you were playing the game, you would have shot up a random car just for kicks.
Yeah, and like, I think that's just I love is that every single thing that happens to David in that episode like cascades on top of each other until it escalates into its like most tragic, like logical conclusion. And the banal tragedy of it is that if even one of these systems actually functioned or worked,
or rather they do function and work, but they function and work precisely how they are designed to do, which is as machines for the extrication of profit rather than for the well-being of the people involved.
That is a better way to put it, yeah. And I just think that's really cool. I mean, look, for all we know, David is going to go down the path and we're going to find out he is, in fact, the chosen one or something. Episode 2 already hints at the classic, the way you make a cyberpunk protagonist special is you give them unusually high resilience to cybernetics, which is what they are hinting at with David. But, even that's not that's not a prophecy. It is not like he was born special, right? It is like everything else about this dude's life, it is a statistical fluke. And
like I said, I'm impressed by how far they take when they deliver his mother's ashes to him in a canister out of a vending machine. It is one of the more believable descents into sicko mode we have seen in a while. Really believe that this dude wants to just step off the edge and lose everything.
He is tired of being nice.
Right.
Yeah, yes. I mean, it turns out the Franz Ferdinand OP is actually super galaxy brained.
Yes. The very good OP.
And I think also, it maintains Imishi's traditional strengths. He's action directing is fantastic. His characters and all of the crew around him, they do terrific smeary, cartoonish animation that works really well. There is clearly a ton of money being thrown at the show.
Right.
There's terrific CG. There's incredibly detailed, busy backgrounds.
Yes.
The character animation is top notch. They have clearly had time. They've clearly had money. They've clearly had their best people on it.
I think this is talking about the setting, kind of not pulling any punches here. It does feel like a good vehicle for Imaishi to let out his sex and violence at Mach speed in nice controlled bursts. And it works. I think it goes very well with his sort of natural state of being.
I mean, this is from what I've been able to gather, the cyberpunk universe is a fairly schlocky, quote unquote, low cyberpunk, if that makes sense. And so kind of the liberal helpings of violence and femme fatales and all that stuff, they play. And, it's clear that the story and the production have been adapted to the strengths of the studio, basically.
Yeah. I actually really do want to give shout outs to two specific animation techniques that Imaishi uses in Cyberpunk that are really visually impressive, but also in some ways holds true to what perhaps Imaishi's secret greatest talent, which is being able to save money in very cool ways. The first one is the nature of David's prosthesis itself, the one that his mother stole, which in the game is called Sandevistan. And it is basically a spine transplant that hyper accelerates your perception of time. And this basically in the game means you get bullet time, right? You can slow down time. And that's kind of what it is functionally in the game, is just you slow down time. But obviously, slow-mo is kind of a hard effect to pull off in non-interactive media because done poorly, it can just bring the pace to a screeching halt. So instead, what Imaishi does to portray Sandevistan is that the animation plays in real time, but what you see are all of the after images of David's movement, in a trail behind him. And the thing that's really cool is that A, this looks really slick, but B, it's actually not that hard of a technique to pull off because all they're doing is overlaying their in-betweens on top of each other.
Right, you're just leaving the cells on the box, basically,
and
right?
But it looks so cool.
It looks fantastic. It looks right, you know.
And a more minor one is just, I really love that they keep reusing the same shots in the first 2 episodes as, like, David goes about his life in Night City.
Right.
Like,
that's
first time he's like,
that's a classic way of emphasizing ennui in visual mediums. So, like, you just keep repeating the same shots again, and it sort of becomes this like routine.
Repetition
this sort
helps
of
hammer home a point.
yeah, you know. But
So,
yes, it's really well done.
Yes.
Yeah, and. You know, we're only 2 episodes in. We've got 8 more episodes to go, which we'll be spacing out over the next couple of weeks.
Right.
I'm, you know, I do want to mention I also very much did like episode 2 and that whole, like, I don't know what you call dream sequence thing in the end, where that ends with the big the words splashing on the screen. I forget the exact words, but yeah, I love that kind of stuff. So
I made a joke that it's basically the "You're Fired" sequence from Back to the Future 2.
Yes,
which is pretty good.
In a way, yes, it's pretty good. So
yeah, and to speak to what we were alluding to earlier, like now. Every Tom, Dick, and Harry out there watches this anime, it goes, well, the anime is really cool. I better check out the game.
The game had its highest ever concurrent player count today, by the way.
Yeah,
marketing works.
The recording.
Yeah,
it's because that's the thing, right? It's like here's the hard red pill about Cyberpunk. All these patches, all these additions to the game they've supported after its launch have not fundamentally changed what that game is.
Yeah, so I'll admit, even I was like, I wonder if I should go back and finish it now that the game is like working. But then I was like, as I was like, I mean, I've already paid for it, right?
I know.
As I was starting to remember actually playing the game, I'm like, oh right. The technical problems were not the big issue.
It's like the bad dialogue.
It's like it's a pretty, like, I would say mediocre at best video game with a very pretty setting, and I'm like, yeah, I'm not going to get what I'm looking for going back into that. I don't think so. You know, your mileage may vary, but don't go thinking that
just equip you can get the sentences from the game and equip it in a menu.
Yeah. Just don't go thinking you're gonna. Don't watch the anime. Don't watch the anime and think you're gonna go into the game getting the same experience.
I was like, do you actually want to get into that a little bit? As we both played the game, but I think you were the only one who actually beat the game, correct?
I did. Just like,
do you want to get into actually a great microcosm of the difference between the anime
it's
and
like,
the game?
And at the beginning of the second episode, he's like, "Chip me up, Doc. Put the spine in me," and like, okay. It's like, in the game, I want to stick 30 implants in my body. I go to the shop and I open the interface and I drag and drop, I slot all the shit into my shit, and then I pay up my eddies and I leave, and now I can double jump and shit.
Yeah,
right?
That's it. No consequence, no side effects.
Whereas David goes in and you get this really horrific quick cut of his spine being sliced out of his body and this other thing being strapped on.
Really,
and his
kind of
jacket
shockingly
is
explicit.
Like blood-stained for the rest of the episode.
Right. And then he passes out because he's not taking his immunoblockers because the doc didn't give them to him because figured this punk kid's gonna be dead anyway. And I didn't take no immunoblockers in the video game.
Right. I think it's just like micro elements like that immediately illustrate just how much better the anime is at evoking that tone than the game.
Yeah,
right.
It's actually playing with the setting and the themes, whereas I feel like the video game is like a kind of mediocre open world shooter that has a nice coat of paint on it, right?
Mm-hmm.
So Anyway,
nobody wants to live in Cyberpunk. They want to go to the Cyberpunk theme park and ride the rides.
Yes.
Fair enough.
I mean, also one of the big problems with modern cyberpunk media in general is that we have forgotten it is meant to be dystopic. So,
well, I'm not going to get too much more into the game. We don't have time for that.
Yeah,
right.
But yes, it does miss that point often. I'll share the one final thing that I was thinking of. How they had to have a streamer mode for the music so that it turns the music off when you're streaming, so you don't get copyright struck when you're on Twitch. And I'm like, that is not understanding how Cyberpunk works. That's highlighting that we are in the worst Cyberpunk future. So anyway,
the anime's cool.
The anime's cool.
When they ride in that moon buggy, they do the up left up thing.
They do in fact do the up left up.
All right, let's talk about another thing that Netflix dropped since we were last able to talk about it.
Hell yeah.
We got another chunk of JoJo's Bizarre Adventure Stone Ocean, which is part 6.
Yes. I want to talk about this simply by stating what happens in the episodes.
What the first battle of
this new segment. Arc of Jolene's companion Hermes Costello suddenly reveals that she had a sister who was murdered by an evil gangster by the name of Sports Max with 2 X's. Now Sports Max is in this prison that they're all in because of course he is, and she's going to try and kill him. But it turns out Sports Max is a stand user. I bet you never saw this coming. And
yes.
Okay.
Gather yourself.
Sports Max's stand is called Limp Biscuit, and it has the ability to create zombies, but invisible zombies. Also, the invisible zombies can walk on walls because invisible zombies have no concept of up or down, apparently. And the reason why the bad guy needs Sports Max and his stand, which again I will remind you is called Limp Biscuit with the spelling and everything, is so he can reanimate a part of Dio's bone, because Dio's body was exploded at the end of part 3, except it's invisible, and so the bone attacks the bad guy and is now somewhere in the prison, and everybody is looking for this invisible bone which has sentience apparently, and
this all tracks so far.
I feel like this is. I feel like we have become even more unmoored from reality than
JoJo
usual,
Part 6 is great.
Yeah, is that basically what we're getting to here?
Yeah, dude,
it's incredible.
Dude, Part 6 is like, if you'll allow music, I want to talk about Survivor after we finish up here with Limp Bizkit.
Yes, we should talk about Survivor, but yes, so. My constant reaction throughout these episodes was laughing every single time they refer to the bad guy because he's called Sports Max. Also, like all Iraqi bad guys, he looks barely human. And also just like the astonishing leaps in logic that it requires you. Like people are saying things like, oh no, we are trapped by the invisible undead, and pretending that that's anything other than a punchline to a joke. And it's indescribably funny. It's so good. Like I just cannot I cannot articulate how incredibly stupid this show is.
Is this just like peak JoJo stupidity here?
Like it is like we took, because like I would say regular JoJo stupidity is we took this seemingly basic concept and then made like a colossal leap of logic to get somewhere else. And here they have taken like 7 or 8 more leaps of logic.
I mean, this is the show where
a place where
at the end of the previous core, the weather report, whose power is weather report, which controls the weather, could summon a tornado of frogs because
yes. I remember this.
There have been
technically
there have been reports of frogs falling from the sky.
Yes,
so it's weather.
We are so far beyond that now.
I mean,
it is just
like the thing I truly love, I think, about Part 6, I think, especially even more than, I mean, again, I will, I've said before that Part 5 is probably my least favorite part, but the thing I love about 6 is I think that 6 has finally fully embraced the core tenet of JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, which is that it doesn't really matter what your stand is when in terms of who wins a fight. It's not the power of your stand, it's who believes in their own bullshit more.
Like it's like a game played by kids in the schoolyard, who can come up with the increasingly improbable explanation of some superpower that you have to get out of this thing,
right?
So like it is basically the Inferno Cop thing where he goes, I am also immune to your bullets. Yes. But like spread across like hundreds of years and like dozens of episodes and stuff like that.
But yeah, so after after they defeat Sports Max and Limp Bizkit, Jolene finds out that the bone is located somewhere in the hole, the pit.
I must also quickly point out that this is the second weird unknown bone that is a plot element in this show. There's also another completely different known
bone from his mother.
Yeah. But yeah, so Jolene finds out the bone is being held in the maximum security wing, where the hardest, meanest, most dangerous criminals go, and so Jolene needs to get sent there, right? And so she does, and it's it's kind of one of those circular panopticon style prison cells, and this is where we're introduced to. I can't believe I'm saying this, but so. We all know that Shonen loves a good tournament arc, right? And that in some regards, the sign of a shonen, a shonen's creative potential, is how quickly do they resort to introducing a tournament arc.
Mm-hmm.
Well, let me tell you, folks, it took Araki 6 JoJo parts to finally introduce what is functionally a fighting tournament with the stand Survivor. Survivor is revealed to be basically a microscopic neurovirus that transmits through electricity. And what it does is that when it infects a person, it removes all of the limitations on their anger control and their physical ability, so that anybody who is infected by Survivor basically is their killing intent. Yes, they're driven to fight. Their killing intent is maximized to the absolute limits of the human body.
They just become completely psychotic.
Yes, and so they fight each other. And not only do people infected by Survivor fight each other, they fight each other to gruesomely self-destructive lengths.
Yeah, it's one ability to see each other's strong points and weak points, like a life bar.
Like a life bar.
Yeah. This is the most violent JoJo has been since part 3, I believe. There is some real kind of punching people and bones are crumbling and blood is flying out of every orifice.
People's skin are being shorn right off of their fists from how hard they are punching each other. It's maybe JoJo has gotten violent, but not in quite this insane visceral.
It doesn't feel as real when Polnareff's foot gets vaporized by vanilla ice.
Yes,
right.
But also, it is unspeakably grotesque, but because it is done in the JoJo art style and because it is done against the backdrop of this absolutely stupid set of circumstances, it is just incredibly funny. It's not gross or anything, it's just unbelievably hilarious.
When hyperviolence is happening Thunderbolt Fantasy, right?
Basically. It's No, go on, Jay. Yeah.
Oh, I was just gonna say, because the basic premise is so they are in the maximum security wing, right? And the first person to get infected by Survivor is a prison guard, or 2 prison guards, and they fight each other to the death. And the surviving prison guard is he just shouts, strongest. "It's Fight Club time!" and just unlocks every cell and just tells everybody to just start fighting each other, and they do.
because they've all been infected with Survivor.
Jolene's been infected by Survivor. Like, she literally, like, mid-fight is like, I'm gonna kill this motherfucker. But because she has her Joestar nobility, she's like, wait, hold on a second. Why would I say such a thing?
Also, every single one of the maximum security cell occupants is like a classic Iraqi grotesque. But
like
the bad
Fist of the North Star rejects?
Yeah. But also the bad guy has revealed that he has planted 4 stand users somewhere among the bad guys. So now it is like, not only is it you must fight for your life, also there are like 4 people with other crazy supernatural abilities hidden among all of these murderers and like robbers and stuff.
It is maybe one of my favorite applications of, again, in spirit, a tournament arc that I have seen in a while.
Right.
Like, especially in a manga like JoJo, or a story like JoJo, which just has never really ever needed to resort to this sort of framework.
Right. JoJo's
just
thus far just gotten away with stand users are drawn to other stand users. So, like, obviously we're just going to meet a new weird stand user every time. It's
right.
Fine.
It's very... JoJo has always been more monster of the week. And so to just have, like, what is essentially a fighting tournament between all of these fucked up, like, super killers is... I mean...
It's a lot of fun.
It's a lot of fun, yeah. And, I mean, even, like, Jolene's first fight in this tournament, quote-unquote, against the prison guard, it is revealed, of course, the prison guard is also a stand user. And his stand has the ability to gravitationally attract meteorites towards himself. And just use your imagination. If you have the power to attract meteorites to yourself, how would you use that power?
There's only one direction that's going to go.
And like, now that Jolene's killing intent has been unlocked, she's willing to use her string powers in increasingly horrible ways.
God, the thing... Joseph would look at what Jolene is doing with the string and be like, that's fucked up.
Again, it is like children, like, just like coming up with increasingly weird reasons to smash their action figures together. It's great.
I mean, all right, Jel, here's an analogy that'll make sense. All right, so we all know the Wu-Tang skit, right? Where they're like all talking about like the fucked up ways they're going to torture each other to death.
The Method Man skit, right?
The Method Man skit,
before,
right? Like,
before Method Man comes on,
exactly. Where it's like I'm take your nutsack and nail it to the drawer. That shit.
Yes.
That's basically what Jolene is doing with string.
Yeah.
Also, again, it has that veneer of JoJo style over it, so everybody either looks like a supermodel or like sewn together from corpses, and everyone is named after some 80s rock band,
right? Or like a fashion designer.
Yeah, I was gonna say, is Survivor? Is that like the band that sings "Eye of the Tiger"?
The band,
Survivor,
yes, it's absolutely the band.
Oh
okay.
yes.
Yeah.
Well.
Like
sounds like
also
like there is a kid who just lives inside this prison who wears a baseball outfit constantly for some reason, who is called Emporio Armani, who has the ability to basically like create Layman's tiny hut from D&D, and it's just like it's barely like the 3rd or 4th most notable thing that's happening at any point. In
they introduced Narciso Anasui, whose band is called Diver Down.
All right, look, guys. I know you want to go over every single crazy power.
The
point is, it sounds like a Mad Libs contest, but this is actual stuff that is happening.
That's JoJo, baby.
I'm having so much fun with part 6. It is.
How far along are you guys in it at this point?
I've only gotten to the point that we've been talking about, basically. Yeah. So,
3 or 4 episodes.
But and this, of course, is the like second batch, so we're like
correct. I believe
quite a
that's going to be 4 total.
Okay,
is what I seem to recall. But
you're probably like 14, 15 episodes in or something like that.
Yeah,
if you're counting the first
15,
batch. So all right. Well, I guess that's also going to be part of next season.
Yeah, what's the next show that's still continuing?
Oh well. Before sorry guys, I forgot to put this on the notes. I did want to talk about one other Netflix show that is finished, and I did want to mention with Kakegurui Twin.
Mm-hmm.
if we're talking about Netflix shows with absurd things happening in them. So I did watch. It was the 6 episodes, if everybody recalls, we talked about last time. Everything we said was pretty much continued to be true, where Mary is not a great main character, and this is like diet Kakegurui. Like, it's nothing quite as wild as anything in the main series, but
Shasta Kakegurui.
The particularly the last 2 episodes were pretty lame, but the middle 2 episodes were pretty good, which Artemis did say when we were talking about it last time. And it led to one very good moment I wanted to try to relay for anybody that watched it. I think you'll
we're back in the old days of the podcast.
Yeah, so like so like the middle episodes, they play a, like, it's called a dating game, but it's really like a random guessing game where, like, you get a team of boys and a team of girls. And the team of boys have to write down beforehand what girl they would go on a date with if they asked them to go out on a date with them.
Group date cafe. And
then the girls have to then pick a guy to ask out.
Right.
And if they match up, they win or something. I don't. Right. The details aren't that important.
You get, like, shot if you don't match.
No, it's not nothing quite like that. But the girls have the option to up the stakes. They can earn more money if they can earn more money if they either offer to go to dinner with the guy, or if they want to earn a lot of money, they can offer to spend the night with the guy.
Yeah, compensated dating. Yeah.
Yes. So the first round goes through, and the girls all offer to go to dinner because that's easy. Let's just get the extra money. Right. And they lose because Mary kind of sucks. That's part of the theme, and she has to figure out how to, like, undo everything. And so, you know, they do all their, you know, cheating and backstabbing and lying and all that stuff to figure out how to win the second round. And of course, to ratchet up the tension, they all bet spending the night in the second round, right? And but, you know, Mary figures it out and manages to win the game, and they take all the boys' money and rub it in their faces and everything, you know, roll credits. And this leads to the best scene in the entire series, where you kind of forget at this point, because it's over the course of 2 episodes, that they lost the first round and still have to honor their dinner bet.
So they actually have to go through with whatever they bet. Okay.
Yes. So even though they won the second round and got all the money, they still have to go through with the penalty from the first round. So they have to all go to dinner, and they have this, like, post-credit scenes of just pure silence other than the sound of, like, silverware on plates, with, like,
everyone's just awkwardly at dinner.
Yes, the camera slowly panning with the girls, like, smugly sitting there saying nothing, and the guys, like, looking, like, absolutely mortified because they're paying for this expensive dinner on top of all the money they lost, and there's, like, no dialogue or anything, music or anything.
I do like a good awkward silence.
Yeah,
that's pretty good.
Just a really good awkward silence after the credits, nothing else, and then they just end the episode. I'm like, all right, that's pretty good. We got one good moment out of these 6 episodes. Because other than that, it was just bad. You can go back and listen to the previous podcast for all the details, because the last time we talked about it a couple episodes ago, because that all pretty much held true. They tried to do their weird, like, let's overthrow the student council thing and whatnot, and I'm like, you guys know you're all rich people.
Also, this is still prequel, right? So it's like,
yes,
the status quo cannot be upended too much,
right? And it is the same student council as the main series, so you know they're not going to succeed. And it's just like, you're wasting my time. But we got that one good moment that I wanted to mention. So,
okay,
all right. Let's move on to shows that still have episodes left, but
you know, a wrap up.
It's our last chance to talk about them. So what's the deal with Fuuto PI, which we did
still going
add to the list?
It's still going.
How many does it have? 1 episode left, or
no? It has it started a month late. Remember, so it's got like 4 or 5 episodes left.
Right. Yeah.
The the latest arc is that our heroes are double detective heroes are stuck in a snowed-in mansion out in the wilderness, and there's a bunch of pretty ladies who are wearing masks, and there's a rich man wearing a mask, and his butler wearing a mask.
And his grandmother also wearing a mask.
And their friend wearing a mask, and they're informed while they're
by the way, we already know that their friend is the big bad, so...
Right. They're snowed in, all these ladies are competing to see who gets to marry the rich businessman on the condition they do not reveal their faces or names in this closed circle. And then, people start dying, and our detectives have to figure out what's going on. And also there's a monster, and maybe they'll transform because it's Kamen Rider. Which my first reaction to this is, this show really, really likes its booby ladies all over the place, dude.
It really needs to turn it down.
It is.
But how else will we know that this is for adults? It's not for kids.
Even though it's a little aimed for 13-year-olds, and feels like it. Let's be real. But man, it is comedic. It is absurd.
Yeah, because the thing is, it's not any more dark or sophisticated or dangerous, really, than the original show, which was a live action show for 8-year-olds.
Exactly.
So you're just throwing boobs into a kids show,
kind of, yeah.
Weird.
And that's annoying because I kind of like the kids show parts. Right. I like it when they transform and kick ass. I like it when the creepy monsters show up. I like it when they press the USB drives and they say dumb things.
Right.
I just would prefer there not to be so much gratuitous fan service.
Now those monsters are showing up and their boobs bounce, and then they brutally murder another hot lady.
Yeah, that's the other thing. There are occasional dashes of ultra violence, and that doesn't really fit the tone. You'll have this lady impaled on a tree branch, and then the next moment this man is transforming into a motorcycle. It's
right.
It's weird. It still feels, it's still a lot of fun. I am enjoying the show quite a bit, but it feels like a lesser shadow of its original self. And I don't know, maybe that's just because I watched that show a decade ago and it has been consistently one of my favorite things since. But it definitely feels this is good, this is fun, I'm enjoying this, but it is an imitation. It is an imitation that is occasionally jarringly off-putting.
The show is making me think, as for somebody who's not seeing Kamen Rider Double, the spin-off of Kamen Rider Double is making me go, maybe I should just watch the original Kamen Rider Double instead.
Yeah, which, arguably is the point, I suspect. But
I suppose so.
It's very odd,
I just find it weird that this thing got made in the first place.
I mean,
it seems such a weird.
Toei have made consistent efforts to kind of grow the brand in recent years,
right?
Especially because its core audience has been less and less productive.
The toys sell less and less every time.
Yeah, it's no secret that traditional weekend morning Toku stuff has been on a downward curve for a while. So I get it; they are attempting to branch out, but it does seem odd. It seems a very clumsy attempt. It's it's like a teenager dressing up in his dad's suit. You're not fooling anybody. You kind of just make yourself look even more stupid than you started.
Sleeves going up over your hands, and
it is the 3 children in a trench coat of anime. It's fine. I'm having a good time. It still looks great. It's fun. There is a lot of stuff from original Kamen Rider Double that I like, but at no point does it threaten to be more than the sum of its parts, if that makes sense. It's good. It's fine. I'm having fun. You could never call it inspired.
Well, I guess, I mean, there's quite a bit of it left, although with the timing of first looks coming up, we actually might not have a whole lot of time to talk about it again.
We'll see. I'm sure we'll get a word in edgeways
at least sneak that in at some point.
But yeah, that is my stance on it. I'm having a great time watching it. Like, I don't think that there is anything here for you if you've not seen like original Kamen Rider, which is what we said in the first place, and nothing has changed on that front.
Iro, you're saying, I mean, are you actually enjoying it, Iro, or you're just saying you feel like maybe you should go back and watch?
I mean, like, I'm inundated enough with Kamen Rider and Tokusatsu, like, tropes / knowledge / expectations to still enjoy it, I think. But
right, again, it's not like you're missing
shows
anything,
up quite similar.
Yeah. So, all right. Let's talk about Made in Abyss, the golden city of the scorching sun.
Man, this is gonna be a weird one because
so
this show deserves a proper like wrap up like discussion, but we can't really do it because
it
has a
45 minutes aren't done.
Let's start because Zig, I don't think you've had a chance to talk about this yet. So
what about the horrifying events of the previous
what is because I feel like perhaps this has become a little bit divisive with everyone's tolerance level for how much suffering they're willing to put up with. And what has your feelings been on this the second season?
I think that it's difficult to articulate this. So I think that my feelings on this second season have been negatively influenced by a lot of the stuff that is happening outside the story itself, and I'll elaborate on that in a second. What I will say is that I think the body horror is very effective at eliciting the responses it wants to elicit. I think that the difference here is that it is beginning to feel artificial, if that makes sense. I think what made the first season of Made in Abyss in particular good is that the danger and the revelations felt that they flowed organically outward from the story. Here it sometimes feels like that the writing is trying to like outdo itself for misery and destruction and like we were joking about it, but like dead baby soup is almost a punchline, you're really pushing it about as far as you can go with that. I think part of this is the fact that the more and more of Made in Abyss I see, the more and more I realize that the author gets off on this shit. And like that is kind of like a combination of external factors, but also just an organic understanding of like, oh, the suffering is not a means to an end. The suffering is the end. And I think that is difficult. I also like, there's a point I wanted to make when I was listening to you guys talk about this a little while back as well. There's a lot in this arc of female characters and motherhood being used as metaphors and proxies for monsters, and I think that's a really dangerous and tricky set of themes to take on. And I'm not saying that men cannot write about those themes, but I think that this is an inelegant and potentially troublesome implementation of that idea. Does that make sense? Like, I think that like we turned this child into a baby factory to protect ourselves has consequences that perhaps the author did not consider when he was writing. That, like, if you do a deeper analysis of the text, do you get me on that?
Yeah.
I mean, what do you guys think? Because I mean, I stopped watching it, so I mean, like, other than what you've told me, I don't really have.
I mean, I would say
to comment on it, but yeah,
I would say in response to this that in a lot of ways, this is for better or worse, sort of the thing that has always made Tsukushi's storytelling so uniquely enthralling, but also undeniably off-putting.
Yes,
is that he knows how to turn the dials and twist the knobs to elicit this wellspring of like awful mixed feelings in his readers and viewers, and yes, to a certain degree, it almost feels artificial. Like he just like he has this, like he found the secret formula, and it almost feels like he can just get away with it, right? Who needs compelling storytelling? I'll just twist the child murder knob, and you'll feel bad about it. And it works.
I am somewhat sympathetic to the argument that I have seen is that like his weird creepiness like functions almost like Lovecraft's racism, in the sense that it unintentionally like makes the work more unsettling, if that makes sense. But I don't know, like I'm not watching this show in a vacuum, you know, like I have the
totally understandable.
The other shows, and like I think that it's difficult because I think that the emotional like catharsis and like the emotion there really is real, you know. And I think the thing that I like, and apologies if I'm dominating here, but I think that the thing which appeals to me about the current storyline is the idea that like it's the same thing that was in the movie, the Dawn of the Deep Soul movie, you know, the idea that in this case Wazukian, in that case Bondrewd, you know, they took a dream, you know, they took a dream, an idea, a hope, and perverted it, you know, and that is powerful. That is a thematically strong and, you know, incredibly meaningful thing to talk about in your show, you know, like Wazukian dreamed of the Golden City, you know, he dreamed of a place where everyone would be accepted, you know, that is in isolation a noble goal, and the idea that, you know, we will achieve this dream whatever the cost is devastating. You know, I think that it's an incredibly powerful thing to write about. The problem is the way it's executed is, again, like creepy and fetishistic and occasionally just too damn nasty for its own good, you know. Yeah, and I'm not entirely sure if I've reached the limit there yet, you know.
I think I definitely agree with where you're coming from, Zig. I will say I think we should also speak to probably the most recent episodes, because I think in a lot of ways, not that these recent episodes are meant to be a salve or a justification, but more that I think the events of the recent episodes are sort of exist to how do I put this?
They're an attempt at mitigation, right?
Yes, to pull you back from the brink, right? Because, yes, Takushi loves to write misery porn, but on some level, he also understands that good storytelling still requires, you know,
catharsis.
What's the word? A catharsis, yes, right? I mean, you know, what's his name? Belof's, you know, sort of self-sacrifice, or sort of his suicide by cop against Fabuta's rampage, allows him to, you know, we have established that Belof, one of the three sages, has the ability to communicate memories and emotions through smells, and established in the flashback that Belof is maybe the only thing left in the village that resembles something of a moral center. He is the one member of the original Ganja tribe that could never square away what they did to Iramui in the name of survival.
Right.
And so his final gift to Fabuta is, because Fabuta was explicitly born of Iramui's hatred and resentment of the village. And again, this is not to justify it, but I can appreciate that the story wants to bring some nuance back into the conflict by Belof basically gifting to Fabuta in his dying moments Iramui's memories of her love and the positive times that she spent with the Ganja tribe. And it sort of, to me at least, sort of gets at the same thing that the Bondrewd arc also gets into, is that if the Abyss is this truly unknowable, eldritch, like horrible pit that is just like actively hostile to fundamental existence, that the one and only thing, the one and only constant that could possibly save us in an environment this hostile is unconditional love.
Right.
And
yes.
Again, it doesn't... Sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say, so like my counter to that would be, I appreciate that. I think I like what they're trying to do, which is the idea that like Faputa has to understand that like, you know, that even though this village was born out of tragedy, you know, there are now positive things here. But my problem is, as a viewer, there has not been enough weight put on the scales in the other direction. You know, I think I still want to see her destroy all of this. I think the only satisfaction I will get from.
And I would say, I would still say that I think the recent episodes broadly agree with your point, Zig. Like, despite her gaining the awareness of Iramui's life, she still basically arrives at the fundamental conclusion, or if not her, then the story itself.
We are not meant to agree with her, though. All of the storytelling techniques that are being used are telling us that she is the villain in this case. And that's my issue, you know. I just don't agree, like, because, like, Reg is saying, you know, I must stand up, I must stop her, you know, this, and, like, we are meant to believe that he is the noble hero, you know, that he is trying to preserve life, he is trying to save that, and I'm just not there yet, you know. I don't think that...
Well, there is still technically the 2 more episodes, right?
Yes, I mean, there's a double-length finale.
Finale, right?
I mean, I guess to all that, Zig, I would ask then, how do you feel about like the final decision of the villagers to that their penitence, or you know, their moment of their attempt at redemption is to just feed their physical beings to Faputa? Like,
I think it is an unnecessarily gross, like, physical manifestation of a metaphor. You know, I think that it's like, I get what you're going for. I think it's in honesty, I think that this last part has been marred by poor execution, really. You know, I think a lot of these sequences have been sort of dragged out extensively for the need for there to be fights and battles as well, you know, and it's difficult, you know. I appreciate that they are doing something more than just, you know, we will wipe this thing off the face of the planet. I respect that, but I'm not there yet. Again, I don't believe in the story that they're trying to tell, and that to me is the big issue. You know, I still don't. I do not have enough affection for the people of this village to not want to see them destroyed, you know, and that's the thing, you know, and I'll freely admit, you know, that like the body horror and the emotional manipulation stuff gets to me much more than a lot of people. You know, it is a weakness. I was very badly affected by the end of Made in Abyss season 1, for example, but to me, again, that scale is just so badly tipped onto the side of, oh, these people should die, and that's still the way I feel about them.
Okay. All right. Well,
we got 2 episodes left.
I know.
You still have anything left.
That made me sound like way more of a psychopath than I intended.
No. It's just that like Iro and I are caught in an uncomfortable position of
you
we
can't
are
say
aware
much, obviously,
of what the last 2 episodes will be about.
Put it this way: they have continued to hold my interest, and that in a way is almost more important than if I agree with them or not.
I mean, I think in a lot of ways it is the hackneyed metaphor we keep bringing up about Made in Abyss, is that Made in Abyss's storytelling is in a lot of ways like the titular Abyss, in that it is a deeply upsetting artifice, but there is something about the way Tsukushi writes that is just, I don't know, just deeply enthralling. I don't know what else to say about it. I'm still reading this damn manga for some reason.
Again, I just feel that like a lot of the disguise has dropped away now, you know, and like perhaps I see a little bit too much of just a dude who likes to write about brutalizing children, you know. All
right. Well, I tapped out after season 1. Artemis tapped out after I forget exactly where she stopped, but probably somewhere around the baby soup era.
It was the baby soup stuff.
Yeah, and then Zig, you might make it to the end of season 2, and then who knows?
I would be very interested to hear what Artemis thought about what she saw this season.
There isn't really anything left after season 2 to adapt yet.
Okay. Yeah, look forward to season 3 in 2026.
Oh God. Yeah. So
at the rate that Tsukushi is currently writing the manga.
All right.
My goodness.
Let's move on. And
yeah.
Are kids getting brutalized in this next show, Gel? Emotionally, maybe?
Emotionally, perhaps. But, Call of the Night. I think I'm officially ready to say Call of the Night's pretty good.
Okay.
Gel, tell us about Megane Colombo.
We'll get to that in a second. But there is one episode left, so which I don't think is really going to change my opinion of the show. They've done an interesting thing where, and if you go back and listen to what I've been saying, I think I've kind of been building up to this, but looking back, it makes more sense to me that they've very slowly progressed over from the first half of the show being this sort of very lighthearted, romantic comedy, let's hang out all night drinking beer and playing video games kind of fun thing, and very slowly and gradually moved it over to this much more nuanced sort of coming of age type of story where they're, getting into, well, why was he so willing to just quit school and be a vampire? And,
right.
And, it does get more serious, but I feel like whenever a comedy does that, it's always like the sort of violent mood swing type of, melodramatic turn or something, and they don't do that. It's a very like almost subtle difference. And I don't. It's not quite like anything I've seen before. Like I don't have like a good example to compare this to, where they're able to have like more serious discussions, but it's not like, the main kid he's like a mature kid.
Mm-hmm.
So like he's not like freaking out or like, breaking down in tears or anything.
Right.
But also he's still like,
his reactions are still kind of immature. Like
he's still naive enough to be shocked when people tell him that life sucks. Which is a lot of what the second half is. Yeah, sorry kid. But there's a couple of moments. There's one episode which I thought was interesting where and this is gonna sound awful, but they work in a maid cafe.
Okay,
Just.
I mean, it's anime.
Work with me on this one. And they find out like it was kind of an uncomfortable how they worded it, but it was like this girl was like upset that she was no longer the most popular maid at the cafe and was like taking suggestive pictures of herself to like raise up her popularity or something.
Right.
And like it starts off as like, oh my god, why is she doing such this horrible thing? And the conclusion they come to is like, yeah, we're all kind of messed up. If that's what you got to do, you do what you got to do, right? And I'm like,
right.
And they kind of get there awkwardly and clumsily, but like that's kind of like the thing they start going into of like, yeah, we're all kind of messed up. Life sucks, and but you can't just like run away from your problems.
Yeah.
There's another part where it almost takes like a horror turn where they run into this vampire guy who was turned into a vampire like 10 years ago, and he has refused to drink anybody's blood because he doesn't want to be a vampire. And they kind of like contrast this with like, Ko's made this decision so like off the cuff or whatever, like, yeah, I'm going to be a vampire without actually thinking about what that means.
Right.
And like, yeah, you're going to have to go drink people's blood and you're going to be like a horrible monster. Anymore. And, and it kind of builds up to even the main girl, Nazuna, kind of admitting
this kid doesn't have what it takes, or like,
no, not that, but like admitting even for her, like,
oh yeah,
things that she gives this whole speech about how like she asks him, yeah, when you first stopped going to school and started like hanging out at night, it was real exciting and everything. And like, is it as exciting now as it was 6 months ago?
Right.
And like, even the most exciting things eventually become normal. And like, she's just bored all the time as a vampire because she's been around for so long.
There's no more novelty. You're right.
Yeah. And like, maybe being a vampire isn't all that cool as it sounds to be. It sounds like it is. And, but it does this in a way where it's like, obviously it's all, metaphorical for growing up and all that, right? But
Yeah.
like it does it in a way that's not like over the top and dramatic, but it's not like super silly either. Like it's still like serious enough where it's like, okay, this is kind of interesting that they're adding some kind of weight to this.
Anime not traditionally great at subtle morals, so this sounds encouraging.
Exactly. So this is why I'm like shocked, especially the way the show starts, because it is very silly in the beginning. Yeah, and this all builds up to them dropping in the girl that the internet was raving over the past 2 weeks.
New waifu just dropped.
Yes, the lady that I described as what if Columbo was a hot anime lady with glasses that was voiced by Miyuki Sawashiro.
Tell me more.
And she comes in. Go ahead.
No, you go.
No, she comes in as kind of like at first she's kind of like goofy, kind of asking around about what the kid's been up to, and then she kind of ends up being what the closest thing the show has as a villain, because she's like a vampire hunter basically, and she's like, I'm not gonna let you become a vampire, kid, so you got to give up on that.
You teach you that love doesn't exist. So
of course,
if fall in love with her.
Of course, if he does give up, and where they kind of leave off,
right? Because then don't they have to like erase his memory or whatever, right?
Or no, they have to kill him. Yes, they erase his memory by killing him.
Yeah.
So,
not technically wrong, but
so on the one side, the vampires are like, you will become a vampire or die, and she's like, I'm not going to let you become a vampire, and if you do, I will kill you. So,
guess I'll die.
Stuck in it. Yeah. So that's kind of where they leave off into the last episode. But yeah, I am really enjoying the turn it's taken. I'll note it has continued to consistently look fantastic throughout, and some of the like their use of color has been really cool, where like, I talked about in the early going, it's all very like, it's all at night, so and they use a lot of like deep purple and gold and stuff like that. It looks great. When Megane Columbo shows up, whenever she's on screen, everything kind of almost goes colorless, almost like sepia.
Okay.
Is interesting. And then like as she's talking to the main kid and like reality's kicking in, you start seeing like these like bursts of color, like all of a sudden, this guardrail is bright green, or like, this sign is red, the stop sign is red now, and like it's like very well presented and directed and everything, which again, anime being visual medium, that adds so much to the experience, and it's kind of hard to
good adaptation goes a long way. I mean,
convey over audio, but
because like these are adapting inherently black and white a black and white medium, right?
Yes, so this is like all the anime production decisions here happening to enhance the story, and I think they're doing a fantastic job. And that's a big part of my enjoyment, I think, in me calling this like a good show, because of like the level of quality.
I mean, it's a visual medium. The way things look is important.
Yes, and the way they kind of use that to support the mood and the storytelling is, and not just, hey, let's just throw pretty colors onto this. Like it's very cool.
Yeah,
so.
I'm just encouraged to hear, because I think like seemingly light-hearted show becomes serious business is a fairly common path in anime, and it's almost always disastrous. So I'm kind of just glad to hear that something, a show handled it with what sounds like a fair degree of like grace and consistency for a change.
Yeah.
Because there are so many like goofy comedies that tried to become heartfelt dramas and just sort of tripped and fell on their face.
And I think because they did it very gradually, like a little bit at a time, rather than just like, here's the drama episode, big plot twist. It was like they start planting the seeds early of like even going back to when I was telling you guys about the time he meets like the tired office worker lady. Like that was still a pretty goofy episode, but they started like injecting like more serious ideas into what's going on. And then, it made it so they could build up to some of the more kind of intense things that happen later. So it's pretty good. We'll see how
it's
the
nice
last
to see an
episode
anime
goes, but-
that like started off a little gratuitous, right? A little a little flippant, right? With its like, high def midriff turnarounds. it's nice to see a show kind of like find its footing.
Oh, there's still some of that in there, but yes.
Unlike the next show on our list that also looks amazing, and just seems to have been completely incapable of finding its footing this entire season.
Let's talk about Lycroris Recoil.
Mm-hmm.
So I'll start this. Oh, sorry, Joe, go on.
I was just gonna say a show that even after I drastically lowered my expectations, still managed to disappoint me in the end.
Oh boy!
But go ahead, Zig. What were you going to say?
The thing I was going to say was that immediately before this show, I just saw a bunch of people on Twitter saying, like, "Oh, they stuck the landing, fantastic!" And judging by your tone, I'm guessing that's not an opinion you share.
That's the problem with this show, because individual parts of it are good and make you want to like it, which I think makes people
even
more willing to shut their brain off and ignore the very stupid things going on. But
right, I think Eero actually made a great point about this the other day, so I'll let him get into that. But I will just say, for my part, is that for better or worse, even to the very end, Lycroris Recoil, on a technical level, does stick the landing. Like, even in the last episode, there are still some really great bits of dialogue. There are some great conversations. I think Mika, funnily enough, comes out of this show looking the best. Like, he might be one of the best written adult characters I've seen in an anime in a little bit.
He's a very interesting character, yeah.
Yeah, and when I say adult, I specifically mean he carries a sense of maturity, but also like moral compromise that comes with age,
weariness.
Yes, a world weariness to him is that like he has lived his life. He has lived a full life, and he has had, whatever ideals or youthful energy he once had beaten out of him. And the show never goes out of its way to portray him as in the wrong for that. It never like says, "Oh, he's just an adult. He's lost his way." I mean, he still does the typical like, we got to entrust the future to the kids thing, but like it never presents his own personal ideology and approach to problem solving as like invalid or in the wrong. And in the end, he makes the hard choices that an idealist like Chisato will never be able to make as long as she remains who she is.
Right.
And I don't know, for me, it's like, unfortunately, you have moments like Mika or characters like Mika in this show who are so well written and so interesting and nuanced and complex in the midst of gestures at the rest of the show. The rest of what it is.
What was
somebody who dropped out? As someone who dropped out at episode 4, like, I have no idea what you're talking about. Like, like, I might as well have been watching a completely different show, because none of this shit was.
Yeah, pretty much nothing at that point was relevant at this point. But Ira, what was your point then that she was talking about?
We were talking about this the other day, like right after we watched it, and G, I think you said like you weren't as mad about it as you thought you might have been, or something like that.
Yeah, I guess I'll explain where my mentality is look, y'all know that when I don't like a show, I can really turn up the heat, right? Look at Kyokai Senki, look at Gundam Build Divers. When I don't like a show, I could go for hours about why I don't like a show. But when I finished Lycroris Recoil, I felt it was a little confusing, because I know I wasn't happy with how it ended, but I didn't feel that like usual fire in me to hate this show.
I'm totally with you on that. Because there are, I've talked about this in other episodes. The moment to moment stuff still feels good to me, like it always has, and like, I like the characters for the most part. And like, I want this to all work, and it's just the big picture stuff is so bad, and like particularly the ending, which I have not seen an ending this spineless since Decadence.
Oh, dude, this ending is bad. Like
right. But
so what exactly happens? Can somebody give me like a plot?
Yeah, so we'll try and give like a kind of a brief summary, but the main, I guess Majima did end up being the bad guy, right? And he's like the crazy, chaotic cartoon villain guy, right? And he's gonna
just
blow
your
up
typical like fictional anarchist who's just like, I'm doing it to bring down the man.
Yeah, so he's gonna blow up the tower to expose the Lycroris to the world, which the Lycroris needs to be exposed.
Yes.
Yeah.
So, and this, it all pans out pretty much exactly as you would expect, with various reversals of fortunes from the different sides, and a final showdown with Chisato versus Majima, and nobody actually dies in the end, and it's just like it's such a thematic mess because they try to pull out in one of the conversations, they try to pull out the life is not like an action movie, things are gray, they're not black and white, and I'm like, I feel like shooting people in the street before they commit crimes and then covering it up is pretty clearly bad. But
the show doesn't think so, though.
But they're like, oh, well, there's bad things or good things. And then I think the thing that really killed it for me was like Chisato's whole like becomes like the definition of privilege when she's like, well, yeah, bad things are happening, but I'm having fun, so maybe it's not all bad. And I'm like, I think the system still needs to get blown up here. And of course, Majima is intentionally painted
completely
as
uninteresting character,
right, but like even though he's making a good point, he's intentionally driven to a level of extremeness.
Right,
where,
he's so cartoonish that like the point that extrajudicial death squads shouldn't exist is like lost in the maelstrom.
It's Killmonger in Black Panther. Like it's like,
yes.
Oops, we gave our villain an extremely valid viewpoint, so now we have to have a shot of him like shooting a baby in the face to make sure you understand he's the villain.
So that's all very, very bad, and it's like what makes me angry from the very start of this show is like, why did you even bring this up in the first place?
Right, why even portray the Lycroris as like morally ambiguous if you weren't going to have the teeth to actually do anything about it?
If you wanted to actually say something about this stuff, sure, bring it up.
Right.
If not...
That's anime in a nutshell. Like the system is always correct. The system is always...
Here's the thing about this show is like, they're not that it is being...
so they think they're not saying that the system is correct. They feel that they have presented a more nuanced, sort of morally gray.
And so now that we've finally gotten all this prelude out of the way, I apologize, Eero. We kept stepping over you, but maybe I think now is a good place for you to explain kind of where this feeling came from.
When I think about how like we have torn apart shows like Kyokai Senki in comparison to this, and then to think like with Kyokai Senki and stuff like that, it's that the show totally fails to make good on its mission statement. And so it's just like we can list all the ways in which it's screwed itself. But then having watched Lycroris Recoil beginning to end and seen how toothless it is and all that, and how it's like trying to juxtapose wackadoo cafe life with the shooty shoot stuff, I'm like, this is exactly what the show wanted to be all along, and so...
Mid.
Sure, you could say that, but like, this is exactly what the show wanted to be all along, was wacky cafe stuff, and then girls with guns, and nobody actually gets hurt. And
right, that's what I was going to say. I feel like there have been many anime that have worn the cloak of we are like about big topic, and kind of just like... hidden themselves
and like
under it.
Production has been impeccable from front to back, and so like the show thinks it stuck the landing and completely presents itself as if it stuck the landing because it's completely.
And I think that is why. Yeah, I think that is why people think it stuck the landing because the show, I think, truly believes it has stuck the landing.
Like a Jojo character, it believes that it's won. Therefore, all the people a lot of people watching who are not us, who have to do this podcast every 2 weeks, go, oh yeah, it did stick the landing. There was a fun action spectacle. It's some good stuff.
And I will say, anecdotally, a lot of people have been watching this show.
Oh, it's a very popular show.
Super popular.
Hideo Kojima, endorsed Lycroris Recoil.
I do not trust Hideo Kojima's taste on anything, especially video games.
But I just coming back around to what you said, G. I agree. Where it's like, I'm mad at that specific part, but like it's like I was still kind of enjoying watching it every week, like because
that's
of
the problem. I mean,
is the thing that it's is the thing that it's hard to get angry at it because there's just not enough substance to be angry about.
No, I think it's because
because I think they're actually like there is enough substance. I mean, okay, if there's enough substance in Kyokai Senki for me to get mad at it. Lycroris Recoil definitely has enough quote-unquote substance that I could get mad at. But for some reason, it's like, again, I think it's what Eero said of like...
There's not stuff in Lycroris Recoil for us to say, why didn't you do this thing differently to better make your point? Because Lycroris Recoil is making the exact point it wants to, and it's just a completely toothless point.
Right, that's what I was trying to say.
The entire show.
Kyokai Senki at least seem to have an agenda, right? Its agenda is horrible ultra-nationalism.
Right.
Lycroris Recoil just seems to be empty. Like, it's not saying anything.
I think...
Other than, hey, isn't it cool that these schoolgirls have guns and they can be sexy and shooting?
I think you're right. Like there's not enough there to get mad at. Almost.
Maybe that is what it is. I'm not sure. It's just it is a weird thing of like normally when a show alludes to the horrors of the police state and then continues to endorse the police state. Usually, that makes me very mad because fuck the police state.
I mean, that's the thing, though. They don't,
or it is deliberately downer ending.
I feel like they were. I don't actually think they were trying to say something, and maybe Iro, this is your point.
They think they're saying something, and they're not. Like,
if I were to define the theme of Lycroris Recoil. It's that, like, bad stuff happens, but, like, there are things that you can still enjoy in life, right? Like, even if you can't change.
A lot. We have to make a lot of sacrifices to preserve the peace, but isn't the peace great?
But it's also kind of saying, like, you can't change the big stuff, too. Like, even in the end, because I don't think they attempt to depict, like, Horus as just straight up the good guys. Like, that was what the whole action movie speech thing was, right? Like... And in the end, the main cast does cut ties with Lycroris and goes on the run, right? So I don't think they're necessarily saying that Lycroris is the good guys, and it's almost more like you can't change the big stuff. So
I mean, ironically, in some ways, like Lycroris Recoil's story almost feels like the conclusion of an actual proper cyberpunk story, of like the heroes recognizing that they are in fact like. As individuals incapable of dramatically altering the status quo, and then coming to the realization that if they cannot change the status quo, then all they can do is run away from it.
Right, yeah. Like that is normally like the super dark downer ending of, oh, the system is bad, but we cannot escape.
Right.
But I mean, if you were to compare this, if you were to compare this to say like Akudama Drive.
I was waiting for it to come up.
The heroes come to the conclusion that it is worth fighting, even if they don't change it. Right, like they still make that stand at the end and sacrifice themselves.
Right, and in doing that, they begin to dismantle the system.
Right,
right? The moral there is that you should resist anyway because you never know what will happen. Basically. And it is still morally right to resist.
And I think they're very much more explicitly saying that the system needs to be dismantled. Whereas in this, it's like, what can you do, right? But,
Shogunai.
Regardless, it's... The pieces were there to make something really great. And instead they made something that was, like, fun and okay.
I mean, it sounds like a completely vapid end to a completely vapid show, quite frankly.
But here's the problem.
A regular ass
think,
burger
I think G, I think you and I are on the same page where I don't think it's really that vapid. It's just like I just don't agree with what they were doing with
because, like I guess this is the difference, which is.
Go ahead, G.
I was going to say, a show that presents itself as vapid, I have no problem with. I love Black Lagoon, okay? Like, that show is like nothing but a schlocky gore fest with people spouting action movie B-movie like one-liners. Yeah. And that's fine because it presents itself as that and is clearly having a hell of a lot of fun with it. Like, I wish Lycroris Recoil, like, if Lycroris Recoil was always going to be this toothless, I wish it had just gone in that direction instead. Like, fully embrace the schlock.
They bring up big ideas and they keep bringing them up. It's not like they.
That's a thing. Like, if it would just shut up about its big ideas, I could accept it as a vapid show. But it doesn't. It keeps to the bitter end, wanting to get its last word in about the big ideas it has.
But that's the thing. If you bring up big ideas and don't do anything with them, that is vapid. That's nothing special.
I mean, they're doing stuff. It's like we just don't like what they did.
If I quote Plato and Aristotle, that doesn't make me a philosopher. You know,
I think
what I'm trying to say is that just gesturing at ideas is not actually exploring ideas.
And that's why I say I wish it hadn't gestured in the first place.
Yeah. So
because it would have been free to concentrate on things like, you know, being cool or being stylish or stuff like that.
Yeah. So I think we're all kind of saying the same thing in just different ways, but yeah, it's just weird. It's a weird feeling at the end of this.
It is a shame. Like
I kind of had fun, but also I'm disappointed.
Yeah, I mean. Turns out money goes a long way, you know? Like, it turns out, like, having a really nice production does an immensely good job of papering over the, like, myriad extremely obvious problems, you know? I mean, shit. This whole last episode, I was like, God, fuck this show. But then Mika, like, quadruple taps that assassin with a shotgun point blank in the chest, and I was like, all right, that's pretty fucking cool.
Yeah.
Like, one blast with a shotgun at point blank isn't enough for this assassin. I need to empty the rest of this tube into her to make sure she stays down.
And I guess on a final note, and shocking no one, those cowards did not let Takina and Chisato kiss at the end.
Oh yeah, like, it's God.
Whatever, that's like 100%.
Birdie Wing,
right? But again,
one day and save us all.
Birdie Wing wins again.
Yes, still anime of the year. No contest.
I mean, I would like to point out, in Birdie Wing, there is a bazooka attack on a moving car, and in Cyberpunk Edgerunners, there is a bazooka attack on a moving car. Coincidence? I think not.
I mean, of course, Recoil has bazooka attack on a moving car.
Okay, yeah, but that doesn't play into my theory because it's...
Yeah.
I think the real test, now also, you know, again, we've only watched the first 2 episodes of Edgerunners, but now the real test is, will both Birdie Wing and Edgerunners go to space?
Who will make it to space first?
I am going to say that Birdie Wing is more likely to go to space than Edgerunners.
Yeah. Well, I unfortunately Birdie Wing is not back until January, I think, right? But
yeah.
And yeah, I was just gonna say the Takina and Chisato not kissing thing, what I think was only amplified by the fact that the show did actually have 2 openly gay characters in there. But
right, yes.
You know,
they can't be the waifus. They can't be the
waifus, unfortunately. They can only lift each other up in each other's arms as they frolic into the ocean at the end. But you know, anyway, that show's done, and so is this episode of the podcast. So, I guess when we're back, we'll be talking about new shows.
This monster of a fall season will have started by then.
We'll also be talking about several of the shows that we talked about on this episode as well. So.
Yeah, well, we'll see how that all works out.
Yeah.
But that's going to do it for this one, though. So let's hit our housekeeping. You can check us out at theglorioblog.com. Follow us on Twitter at theglorioblog. You can subscribe to the podcast on iTunes, Google Play, Spotify, Amazon Music, Podbean, Stitcher, and of course you can check it out on YouTube, where you can like, comment, subscribe, ring that notification bell, all that good stuff. Tell your friends, tell your enemies. We'll catch everybody next time.
Hideo Kojima should watch Utena.